Hi guys, this is Stu from Mobile Geeks, and right now we're going to give you an in-depth look at the new Acer Iconia Tab 8, which is a new tablet from Acer. Obviously this is an Android tablet, as you can see, and it's running the new Intel Bay Trail system on chip. In this case we've got the Intel Atom 3745, and we also have a full HD display here. Now this is all quite impressive when you factor in the idea that this is a $200 device here from Acer. So you can expect to get this on Amazon. I think right now this is available for $200. So it is an affordable tablet, but it's a tablet that we're kind of expecting a little more from than we've seen from affordable tablets in the past, simply because it has that Intel system on chip, backed by 2 GB of RAM. It has a 8 megapixel shooter on the back, 2 megapixel shooter on the front, a full HD display, and overall it's a pretty impressive device for what you're paying. Okay, so let's just go around the device. You can see right here we've got a power button on the top right hand edge, also the volume rocker just below. Nothing else on that side. You can see on the bottom of the device we don't have anything. On the right hand side we have a mini SD card slot, and around the top, interestingly, we have the USB 2 port right here, sitting right next to a mini HDMI port and the headphone jack right there. As I mentioned, you get an 8 megapixel camera on the back, and you can see that's kind of just sits slightly raised above the rest of the back cover there. Hello. Okay, now overall in terms of the build quality, there is a little bit of give between this glass panel that sits on top of the device and the back cover. This is particularly noticeable right here, where you can pretty much just push that inside. You see that? It's the same over here. In fact, you can probably get your thumb quite easily inside there. Weight-wise, it's not bad. It comes in at 360 grams, which is okay for an 8-inch device. It's not the lightest. I think the new iPad Mini is like 300 grams, or maybe just 314? Anyway, it's not bad. I would say overall, in the hand, it also feels reasonably good. The finish here is it's plastic. It's not metal, as I mentioned, and it actually feels it feels quite classy, but it's not fooling you into thinking that this is metal. But then again, if it was metal, it would probably weigh considerably more. So in terms of performance, we've got the new Intel Bay Trail Z3745, which has a base clock of 1.33 gigahertz and a turbo of 1.86. It's a quad core. It's a system on chip, so it's one single chip that only uses, I believe, 2 watts. If the information from Intel is correct, we can just go into here. We can look at about tablet device information. We can see, there you go, Bay Trail Z7345, and you get a 16 gigabyte ROM and 2 gigabytes of RAM as well. 2 gigabytes of RAM is great to see on a device of this kind of this kind of price range. So here we have some benchmarks, and you can see there that in the Chrome browser, this is using the Valamo benchmark. It's scoring 3,129, which is pretty decent, and that puts it above, well, it puts it above the Galaxy S5, the OnePlus One, HTC M8, which all use the Snapdragon from Qualcomm, the 801, which we consider to be pretty much the top dog. But if you look at this test here, this is GFX Bench. GFX Bench is given actually not a bad score, but I think if we get on to, let's see if we can find 3D Mark. 3D Mark, a score of 16,000 in 3D Mark Ice Storm actually is not that impressive. So I think, and we've seen this before on the Intel SoC, the raw performance, and these kind of scores are pretty impressive. The raw performance is there with the CPU part, but if you want the pure grunt on your GPU, you're probably better off going with the Qualcomm variant. And here we see the Antutu benchmark. This is Antutu, the new version 5.1, and you can see that actually in this test it scores a little bit below several higher class, or at least more expensive devices which run the Qualcomm 801. Okay, so that's performance. Overall, we're not seeing any lag at all. So that was me, I wasn't lagging this. And you can see as I'm sliding from page to page here, it's actually very responsive. Let's go out, let's go into the camera. So let's take a look at this 8 megapixel camera that we have here on the back. Well, for an 8 megapixel camera, come on, from Sony recently we've seen 20.7 megapixel cameras, and we've also seen Samsung and Nokia really ramp things up where cameras are concerned. So what do we have here? Right, well, we've got this set to sepia mode. We can get out of that by, yep, let's go back to none. And here we have our chap in his boat rowing across the river. That's the ferry in Bhutan, folks. So if we want to take a snap, we can kind of try to zoom in here. There's no image stabilization or anything like that, so I'm going to try and stand still. Now it kind of looks a bit blurry in real time, but when we open up the pic, it's not so bad. But let's just zoom in here and just see what kind of clarity we're getting. It's not really that impressive. Now this is partly, and it's a little bit grainy, and that's partly because it's dusk right now. It's getting dark here in Taiwan, and yeah, the low light kind of isn't really doing as well as it could do. Let's just go back to our camera app like so, and we can see that we can flick from the 2 megapixel camera on the side here, which is pretty, how you doing folks, pretty unimpressive if we're being honest, but then we're kind of used to that. Now we can flick through these modes on the side here. So there we have picture-in-picture mode. Here we have different, well, that's a panorama. That's kind of repetitive shot taking. And here we can change the exposure, as we did just a moment ago. And that's it, that's all you're getting. If you want to get deep into it, you also have, well, you have your general camera settings. But we've played around with this, and actually, with most of it on auto, you're getting as good a camera experience as possible, probably with the auto configure settings. Let's take a closer look at what kind of photos we were able to take with this Tab 8 camera. I think this is one of the better ones. Here we have a little bit of fried rice, which I had a couple of days ago, and we took a little bit of time over it, and you can see that the area it's in a restaurant, it's quite brightly lit, so in bright light conditions you can take decent photos. Can be done. And here we are walking around the local area. Now, okay, these are purple flowers, and I'm telling you, the purple flowers in real life don't look like this. I don't know, the color representation has been slightly misconfigured, I think is probably the best way to describe it. We did dick around with the settings a little bit. We changed the exposure and a few of the settings, and it did not improve things. So I guess that's just a small fault there. Maybe it just doesn't like the color purple. Okay, but otherwise, you can take reasonable pictures. Here's a local temple. So we're just focusing on the display here. As you can see here by the river in Qindian, Taiwan, it's getting a little bit towards dusk. The sun is heading down, and the brightness of the display is absolutely doing a great job. Now we'll just check that brightness. Yeah, the brightness is on full. If we go down a little, it's still doing okay. And earlier today we did use the device in full sunshine, and it did a reasonable job. If you look at the viewing angles here, it's an IPS LCD display, so of course you're getting 1920 by 1200. It is full HD, and if we just zoom in on some of these pixels, you can see that you're getting a PPI of 283 pixels per inch. So yeah, this is definitely one of the highlights of the device, is the display. Okay, now in terms of audio, I'm just going to run this 3D Mark benchmark here, which you can see looks pretty good on this display. Let's wait for this to load up, because on the back here we have a set of stereo speakers. And presented, well, they're hidden behind these little holes, as you would expect. Now, where are we? Let's see if we can crank up this volume a little bit. We're on portrait mode, so the volume rocker goes up that away. Okay. It's really not that loud. It's not the loudest device we've ever come across, that's for sure. And I guess having the speakers placed on the back also means that the volume, well, we recently reviewed the Lenovo Tab S8, and to be honest with you, that had front-facing speakers which performed much better. And that's a tablet in a similar price range. So I'm kind of thinking, well, you know, should we complain? Not really. I guess, you know, for a tablet of this price range, this is what we're expecting. And I guess the overall feeling is it's a little unexceptional. It's decent. It's virtually no bass, as we would kind of expect from a $200 Android tablet. Okay, so the Iconia Tab 8 comes with a 4,600 milliamp hour battery, which the company reckons will get you 5 hours of usage. It's, of course, as you'd expect from a tablet, it's a non-removable battery. You can't get the back off here, even though it kind of feels like you can a little bit at the top, but that's okay. And in our testing, well, we didn't see 5 hours. Let's go to our laptop magazine battery test. We saw 5 hours 43 minutes, which is not great. I mean, the Lenovo Tab S8 that we recently reviewed got more than 6 hours, so I guess that did a little bit better. For a similar sized device using the same system on chip from Intel, I guess, yeah, maybe Acer's lagging behind just a little bit, but battery life is certainly not exceptional. Now let's get on to software. Software is something where we really do have plenty to say, and that's pretty much because Acer are giving you way too much in the way of what I think are prepaid for kind of bloatware. I mean, Booking.com, Zeno, this is W Games, Audible, Stunning Apps. What do we have inside Stunning Apps? Well, we have a lot of options. I mean, some of these, okay, I might use, right? I'm not saying that these are useless apps or anything. I'm just thinking, I think I would prefer to install for example, Vimeo. I mean, do I want Vimeo or do I want YouTube? I would just kind of install the apps that I personally prefer. And here we have Acer accessories, but of course, well, we can't connect to the network, but if we could connect to a network right now, it would tell us that we have to log in. Same with the Acer portal. We go here, we have to create an Acer ID. This is Acer bringing you into the ecosystem, unfortunately, and it's not something that I'm particularly keen on. And I've talked about this before. You know, Samsung have their ecosystem and Sony have theirs, and I think as much as these companies want to do this, I think companies like HTC and Asus recently, another Taiwanese company, two Taiwanese companies, have kind of shown the way for me because they're giving you a much more vanilla Android experience, which is what we have here in the most part. I mean, look at this gallery app here. This gallery app, I don't think Google even uses this gallery app anymore. I think they could be doing better. I think not having the hardware buttons also, why not have hardware buttons? I would like, as I said this before on other devices, I would like the option to have both hardware and software buttons. Here we have our Google apps all kind of squeezed into the corner right here. And I think that's it. I mean, Google squeezed into the corner, but Acer's all over the place, and they're also obviously in cahoots with Amazon big time, because you're getting an Amazon shopping app, you get an Amazon Kindle, and Amazon Kindle app for your books, and also the Amazon App Store, Amazon Local, Amazon MP3s. I mean, Amazon have obviously paid Acer quite a bit of money to do this, as have eBay, as have Evernote, Facets, and Audible. And where does it end? GoGoBot. You've got the, okay, McAfee security. Why do we need McAfee security on an Android device? I don't think that, and you know what? Is this even the full version? Do I have to get started by agreeing to do whatever the hell they want me to do? And I'm just not into this. This is something I do feel strongly about. This is bloatware at its worst, I'm afraid, people. This is worse than what we saw on Samsung or Sony. And if we go to storage, we can see that right now of our 16 gigs, we have 5.5 gigs available, which isn't fantastic. I mean, okay, we've downloaded 1.5 gigs of stuff, and that's going to be, okay, that's 3D Mark's going to be a considerable part of that, and some of the photos too. But the system and the installed apps is, well, it's just too much. I think this could be a lot slimmer. And when we look at the way the actual the navigation works, it is pretty much like standard Android, right? So what's going on, folks? You're taking standard Android and you're filling it with your own apps. I mean, the worst example right here is, if I slide to the right, Amazon, start here. I've never bought an app from Amazon. Should I start today now that I've bought an Acer device? Acer have been guilty of this in the past, certainly on their laptops, and I understand that this is probably the difference in the price margin. The difference between having these apps and not having these apps probably is worth at least 10 or 20 bucks per device to the company, which might just be a big chunk of that margin that they have. So how are we to conclude our thoughts about the Acer Iconia Tab 8, which I should also remind you is actually the A1-840FHD. So Acer, obviously marketing department's way out of control there. But anyway, that's what it'll look. That's what it'll actually be titled if you look it up on Amazon, where you will find it for $200. So let's look at this in context. For $200, this is a pretty impressive piece of kit. I mean, I remember just a few years ago when the first Nexus 7 came out, I paid considerably more for $200 here in Taiwan for it, and it had a 720p screen, and probably nowhere near the performance that this guy's got. It also only had 1 GB of RAM. We're getting 2 gigs of RAM here. That's something I like to see. I like to see the micro SD card slot too. I don't really like having, I don't really like having all the USB slots at the top. That's one thing I'm not totally keen on. The camera is okay, as we said, as long as, you know, you're in good light conditions, and the performance is okay, the battery life is okay. There's a lot of okay going on. Nothing is fantastic. It's almost fantastic. The build quality is very good, but there's a little bit of give, and we've noticed issues up here. So it's not the perfect device, but it is a solid product for $200. A solid product that I believe is actually, if you like, damaged by the software implementation. This is just insanity, folks. We don't need all of these apps pre-installed. I think they've just gone too far, and we should consider this bloatware, especially the commercial side of things. That really kind of annoys me, as I'm sure I've already kind of iterated in full. Now, you've also got other options from Asus and Lenovo, and then we have the cheaper Chinese tablets as well, which can be like less than $100 nowadays. So this is a crowded space. It's a really crowded space, and I think Acer may struggle to really get a real stranglehold in the market with devices like the Iconia Tab 8. That's my honest opinion. This is Stu from Mobile Geeks. Please let me know what you think in the comments, and if you like this kind of stuff, don't forget to subscribe, folks.